So let's see if Heidi Graham can get this straight, get all my technology correct. No, that's not what we want to see. And that's not what we want to see. This is what we want to see. All right. Of course, now my video's in the way. All right. So this is our moderator training. And like I said, my name's Heidi, and I'm the president of the League of Women Voters that covers Arlington Heights, Mount Prospect, Buffalo Grove, Wheeling, Prospect Heights, Elk Grove Village, and sort of kind of Rolling Meadows, simply because we cover all of the high schools that feed into District 214 and all of the schools that feed into District 214, as well as St. Viator. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about what the difference between a forum, a candidate forum, which is what we do here at League, versus a debate. Not to say that one is better than the other. It's just we have determined at our local league that that's what we do. Here today, your training is so that you can do things for our local league. This training is not going to necessarily allow you to do forums for leagues outside of this local one, but that's may not necessarily be true. I've just been asked by the Park Ridge League if I had some students who might moderate their next candidate forum. So stay tuned. What's the difference between a forum and a community discussion? We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about a community discussion versus a panel discussion. And then what's your responsibility versus what is voter services responsibility? And I'll explain what all of those things are. And then what about a program chair? So depending on what you are doing, if you're doing a panel discussion, you'll probably be dealing with someone in charge of the program, not in charge of voter services. I'm going to give you a sample step grid and then talk about the advantages of Zoom versus in person. I know you guys are all experts on Zoom right now, and some of us really thrive in an in-person environment. I know that I do. However, I will say we have determined that for us, there are some real distinct advantages to the whole Zoom thing. The first and the foremost, if you watch the last presidential debate, is being able to shut off somebody's microphone. Things can go wrong. It's okay. Remember, in any of these situations, when you are the moderator, you have far less at stake than anybody else in the room. Your job is to make everybody feel comfortable, right? So even if you're nervous, and sometimes I'm so nervous that I feel like I'm going to be sick, but my job is to fake it till I make it and just make everybody feel like this is no big deal. I do this 1,000 times. And honestly, the more you do it, the easier it becomes. Then we'll have some time for Q&A, and I will give you all some resources. So you guys can read. I'm not going to read this to you. I just want to quickly kind of define forum versus debate. So you all know what a debate is. Most likely you've seen at least part, especially this year, of a presidential debate. And a moderator asks a question of one of the candidates, and that candidate answers, and then other candidates may rebut. They may come in. They do a lot of, in the kind of debate that we have on television, because it makes good television right now, is that they're cutting each other off, right? They're coming in. That's not how we run our forums. We call them a candidates forum. And because we're nonpartisan, we absolutely do not endorse political parties or candidates. In fact, as president, I'm not even allowed on my personal Facebook page to say who I'm voting for. It's not that I don't vote, it's that I do not make it public knowledge. Now, if you're my good friend, I would tell you who I voted for, but I absolutely am very careful that I make nothing partisan in any of my social media outlets. So let's say we've got a candidate forum for mayor, and we've got 2 people running for mayor. and I mean the League of Women Voters sets up the forum, and then the moderator's job is to stand at a podium and ask questions. Where do you get those questions? Well, we generally speaking get them from the audience. We ask the audience to give us those questions. Then we have volunteers who are behind the scenes who do what we call question sorting. And they take those questions that they get and they start to see, oh, I've got 3 questions here about water retention, and I've got 4 questions here about trash pickup. Well, I don't need to ask 4 questions on trash pickup. So I'm going to take those questions, make them into one, and then I'm going to pass that off into, pass that to the moderator. So their job is really to hand you questions that are pre-formed. So you ask the question, and so first you introduce the panel, right? Tell who everybody is. And then you give, in a candidates forum, we allow each candidate to give an introduction, and they are given an introduction the exact same amount of time. So it depends, right? So we keep our forums to about an hour. And so sometimes we've had as many as 6 candidates in one forum. So then we're going to make those answers be less time, right? Because it's just a matter of math. Now, don't make me do the math. I ask other people to do that. That's not what I do. I do not do math. I have other talents. Math isn't one of them. So anyway, so generally speaking, an introduction, they'll speak for either a minute or 2, and then the other person goes for a minute or 2. Then you ask the first question. Now, whoever gives their introduction first, they get the first question first. So they alternate. And then the next question goes to the second person first. So they don't rebut each other. They just answer the question. Now, they are allowed 1 rebuttal, sometimes 2. But once they use it, they've used it. So they usually save that for when they really feel like they need to come in and make another statement. And then at the end, they're given the exact same amount of time to give a conclusion. And again, whoever gave introduction first, they go second when it comes to their conclusion. So the moderators, probably the hardest thing about moderating is making sure that you alternate who gets to go so that it never appears or feels like someone has an advantage. And we try really hard to make sure that we are unbiased. So then, okay, so now hopefully you understand a forum. What's a community discussion? Well, I'll use an actual example. So a couple of years ago, Prospect Heights, the city of Prospect Heights, wanted to go from, they wanted to pass a resolution that they would be under what's called home rule. I'm not going to explain home rule. It's kind of complicated and boring, but every other city in the area is under home rule. Okay, they're the only ones who aren't, and it puts them at a little bit of a disadvantage when it comes to getting money for services. So they wanted to pass home rule. But they were trying to get the community behind this. Well, the city, there are a lot of rules that guide city governance, and they're not allowed to campaign for or against something on the ballot. So what they wanted to do is just have community forums where the community could come in, hear about what home rule was, and then ask questions. Well, because I do not live in Prospect Heights, I don't have what I call a dog in the fight. I don't get to vote on that issue. So I moderated those community forums. I could come in and say, I don't care either way if you guys pass home rule. I'm just here to try to make sure we have a civil conversation about home rule. In this case, instead of having question sorters that took all the questions if we're live, we have people passing out note cards and we collect those note cards. So it takes a lot of volunteers. When we're on Zoom, how we do that is we ask them to text a number so that the people, I have a couple, they live together, and so they're able to sort those questions together. Anyway, so in this case, though, the city wanted people to be able to ask the questions themselves. So instead of those questions coming through me, the moderator, what I was doing was saying, okay, sir, your name is, okay, here's your question, go please ask your question. Try to keep it as a question, because what happens is people get up in front of an audience and they decide that they're going to speechify, that instead of asking an actual question, they're just going to give their opinion. That's one of the really hard things about a community discussion, is trying to push gently people towards a question. The other thing is, instead of having a strict time in a community discussion, usually what we'll say is, because we have so many people here tonight, we want to keep things moving along. We're going to ask you to keep your comments to about 2 or 3 minutes. We've got a timer here that's going to give you an indication of how long you've spoken, just so we can keep things moving along, but we're not going to adhere to any strict time limits. So it's a little different, because in a candidates forum, I promise you, when that timer says stop, they get to finish their sentence, but that's it. They do not get to go beyond that. And the moderator's job is to shut them up. Okay. So it's just one of those things that you just, the longer you do it, the more confident you are in it. Panel discussion. So a panel is a group of people talking about a given discussion. We have lots of panel discussions at League. Last week, we had a panel discussion that was about the environment. The picture here that I'm showing you is a panel discussion. We called it Meet Your LGBTQIA Neighbor. And so it was a panel of young people, each who had a different gender or sexual identity, and they were offering an opportunity for people who might not be so in tune as some of you are, who the first thing you do is introduce yourself with your pronouns. That's so new to somebody my age that it was an opportunity for us to learn. So we wanted to create a safe environment for these young people to be able to tell their stories. So in this case, the moderator introduced each person, let them tell their stories. Then we took questions from the audience on note cards. We didn't let them ask the questions because the moderator wanted to look at those questions, because she, being LGBTQIA herself, was able to look at those questions and see if it was something that might be triggering or insensitive. And then she asked those questions and led it along. So it's not quite as formalized. So as you see, as we go through, we go super formal, very defined, kind of formal, kind of defined, to less formal, and oftentimes very informal and not as defined. So each one can be a little bit different. So, okay. So what voter services? We have a team of people that we call our voter services. Now, I should mention that the League of Women Voters, all of us are volunteers. We don't have a single paid employee, not one. And so we're all volunteers. So sometimes we screw up, and that's okay. My motto is progress, not perfection. But what voter services does is they determine the date of the forum. They determine who's going to be at the forum. They determine the rules. They send those rules to the candidates. They make sure the candidates have signed those rules. They really should provide the moderator with a script. That said, I have moderated forums where I have not been given a script. So that's one of the resources I will give you, is a sample script. So if you don't get a script, you can take this sample script and edit it to work for whatever forum you're going to moderate. Because what I really hope is that maybe when you get into college or high school, maybe you decide, oh, we're going to do a candidate forum for our school, or maybe student government, and then you have these skills to be able to lead that. So the voter services, they get the timer, they get the question sorters, they provide you with an emergency contact name and number. So things happen, like over Zoom. What if your internet dies and all of a sudden you can't get there? You need to have another way to contact somebody to say, hey, you know what, I can't show up. Because it has happened that when we've been in person, that we've had a snowstorm and our moderator was not able to come, or things happen. I mean, kids get sick, parents get sick, whatever. So this is all, it's super important that if you're going to moderate, that you make sure you have an emergency contact name and number. So if it's a panel discussion or a community discussion, again, the person in charge of that, which I would call the program chair. So like I have an environmental chairperson, I have a mental health chairperson, diversity, equity, and inclusion chair, et cetera, et cetera. They're the ones who set the agenda for the program, the date, time, location. Again, they should provide you with a script, but we're volunteers. Sometimes we screw up, sometimes we forget. So that's something that I'll give you a resource, some samples that you can use. And again, if they request any volunteers for timers or question sorters or anything, that's their job, not your job. Your job is to show up not just on time, but early, at least 15 minutes early, to make sure that everything is set, to be able to take a breath, set yourself, and to be comfortable once the event begins. So again, like I said at the beginning, the forum format, which this is what we have the most of. So for instance, 2 years ago, because we cover so many communities and the local elections, we have village, we have park boards, school boards, we have township boards, we have water reclamation districts, we have judges. 2 years ago, we did 14 candidate forums, 14 over 7 days. So it's a lot. There was like 3 weekends in a row where Saturday and Sunday we were 2, 2, 2. It was a lot. So that's why we need a lot of moderators, because it takes a lot of energy to do this kind of work. It's tiring to be on and enthusiastic and happy. And afterwards, you're super tired. I think Kat can probably attest to that. But again, you will be told what the format is, how long the opening statement is, how long the question and answer period is, and how long the closing statement is. So what you're then having to pay attention to while you're doing the forum is, whose turn is it to go next? Do I have a question ready to go? Is the person, as they're speaking, are they adhering to the time? Sometimes they don't pay attention and they don't see the timer. So then the person with the timer says stop, but they don't see it. And so then your job as the moderator is to gently come in and say, candidate Sporchich, I'm sorry, but your time is up. And then if they keep going, you say, I apologize, but I need to ask you to stop speaking. And you be firm and non-apologetic. I will say most of you here today are women. We do have one young man, but women in general over-apologize. We say, I'm sorry at every turn. It is my life's goal to get young women and women in general to stop apologizing for every last thing. So when you do these candidate forums, I want you to be confident. If you have to apologize, that's one thing. I've made mistakes where I've accidentally, I've given one person more time than I should have. I can apologize for that, but I don't need to apologize for everything. So keep calm, Follow the rules, take a breath. As a speech coach, the number one thing I tell people when I'm judging them is take a breath. Slow down, take a breath, okay? There's no harm in a small pause so that you can take a breath and settle your heart rate. So generally speaking, a lot of times there'll be someone from the league. Oftentimes it's me, the president, who will introduce the candidate forum and introduce the moderator, and then you take over. And then you go ahead with, just leading them through opening statements, questions, closing statements, and then sometimes they might have rebuttals. So these are the rules, and I'm going to give you a copy of this, but literally this is the piece of paper that we send our candidates. I'm not going to make you read it all, that they have to sign. And we don't allow them in our forum until they have signed this document. Like on this, it says that, the audience will give the questions on index cards. Obviously, if we're doing it on Zoom, they're not doing it on index cards. We're taking it some other, virtual way. The nice thing about, so in person, we ask the audience not to applaud in between. And that can be a moderator's job to calm an audience down. And sometimes I have seen rowdy audiences. Sometimes if it's a super contested election, and I promise you this year, because of COVID and because of the impact on schools, we are going to have some very contested elections. But the nice thing is all of our forums will be on Zoom. The audience is muted. We don't do it as a meeting. We do it as a webinar. So they're unseen and they're unheard. And they can't be seen or heard unless I, as the host, unmute them. It's beautiful. I'm telling you, Zoom can be a beautiful thing for this. We also record and publicize all of our forums. So here's the thing. What are the rules? So Kat, in the last round of candidate forums, Kat actually lived in the district that she was moderating. But guess what? She wasn't 18. She couldn't vote. So she didn't really have a dog in the race. So that you have to be impartial. So that's why leagues, like, we share moderators, because I can't moderate the Arlington Heights race. I live here. I vote here. I can't moderate that race. It's just not right. Can I do Mount Prospect? Absolutely. Can I do Park Ridge? Yes. Can any of y'all do any of these races? Yes, because every single one of you is under 18 except Kat. Now, Kat can no longer do Arlington Heights because she's 18 and she can vote. Can she do Mount Prospect? Yep. So dress the part. So here's the part. We are about equity, diversity, and inclusion. And we recognize that sometimes that we don't all have the same resources for clothing. For our speech team, we require our young people to be in a suit during competitions. I don't require any of you to be in a suit to moderate for us. I just like you to look as nice as you possibly can. And if anyone ever said to me, I just don't have something I feel comfortable wearing to be on camera, we have league shirts that I can give you. Arrive early. Pay attention to your background. So I just want you to notice what I've got going on back here, which is not much. Now, if I turn my camera, because right now we're under construction, look at that. Like, I'm in my dining room that is kind of my kitchen. It's just a mess. But you don't need to see that. That's, again, the other nice thing about Zoom is more often than not, you have a lot of control over what your background looks like. I have this background that's portable that a lot of times I'll drop off at the moderator's house. I have another one that can just be hung. So anyway, we try to help you with that. We try to be branded. You guys are young and smart, and you know how important it is to brand yourself. If people don't know who we are, I kind of waste my time. Review your script. If they don't give you one, ask if they have one. Sometimes they just forget. And if they say, oh, we don't have one, then that's why I'm giving you the sample one. So how do we determine who gets to go first? Well, in person, we flip a coin, or if we've got, like, remember I said, sometimes we have forums, like in primaries, you can have like 6, 8 people running for in a primary. So we would draw straws, or they draw numbers out of a basket. It becomes a little harder on Zoom. So the last time when I had more than one person in a candidate forum, I think I had 4, and I just picked straws and I put them in my hand like this up to the camera. And I said, okay, pick one. And they pointed and I said, okay, is this the one you want? And that's how I did it. It was not the best, but you know, it worked. We're all doing our best in this virtual situation. Remember, like I said at the beginning, you're in charge. You have so little to lose in this situation. These candidates, they're the ones who have everything to lose. Do not let them intimidate you. And I promise some of these people that are running for office, especially, I won't name a gender or an age, but maybe you get my drift, can sometimes think that they're the smartest in the room, and don't be intimidated. Prior to the forum, so the other nice thing about the Zoom format is that, again, the audience doesn't get to come in until we tell them they can come in. Till I push start, no audience members come into the Zoom. In a live forum, you know, we're at a library and you've got people filing in and there's just a lot going on and you've got volunteers running around. What you have to do is you have to get all your candidates together, like in a circle, like a huddle, right? And you say, okay, I'm going to review these rules with you. Remember X, Y, and Z. This is what you all signed. And I want to make sure we're all on the same page. And then you do your coin flip, or however you're going to determine who gets to go first. The audience is not allowed to applause. They're not allowed to electioneer. What that means is, like, I can't show up with my MAGA hat, you know, Make America Great Again. I cannot have that in the room. I can have it outside. In fact, in live forums, we provide tables outside of the forum room for all of our candidates to put whatever they want, but it cannot be inside the room. They can't have a shirt on. They can't have a button on. Absolutely not. And then talk about, you know, we're going to ask a question and maybe define a question. Alternate speaking order. I really recommend that you go and maybe watch a past recording. If we were in, or maybe come to a forum that you're not moderating, just to see what it's like. Maybe you can volunteer behind the scenes to help sort questions, or maybe act as the timer, be the person who runs the timer for the forum. I always recommend that candidates, or that moderators, have a couple of questions ready, just in case the audience is slow. I'll be honest, I've never had to use one of my pre-done questions, but I like to be prepared. Google the participants, make sure you know how to pronounce their names. It's okay to ask, and then smile and breathe. Those are the 2 biggest things I can tell you, right? Those 2 things will smooth everything over. And I do want to be honest, and why do we want to use young people? First of all, if anyone knows me, Kat will tell you, she's known me almost her whole life, I really do believe in elevating the voice of young people. I want to give you guys opportunity. I'm old. I've had all the opportunity I need. I want to give you guys a chance. We're a nationally recognized organization. I write a mean letter of recommendation, right? All of these things look good on a resume. All of it, right? Plus, I've got a great network of people. If you're interested in any of this, I can almost always promise you that I can introduce you to somebody who can help you. But the other thing is, adults can be jerks that come to these candidate forums. They can misbehave. And the minute a kid is in front of them, a young person is in front of them, they all act better. They all behave better. It's magic. You guys have a magic potion when it comes to making adults behave. So that's the other reason I like to use young people. So this is what I was talking about, this step grid. We have step grids that look like this. And again, I'll share this in the resources for up to 8 candidates, I think. So you would just, it's just a way while you're running the forum that on your, either on your podium, or the nice thing about Zoom is they can't see what's down here on my table as I'm writing frantically going, okay, who goes next? And then smiling at the camera. They don't need to know that I'm frantic. So this is a big help. And then again, like I said, you know, we have decided as a league, I don't know that we will ever again do an in-person candidate forum. There's some advantages to in-person, but we are finding that the advantages to Zoom are far outweighing the advantages to in-person. We get more people to attend because they don't have to get out of their pajamas. We don't have to worry about a place. We're not having to negotiate and pay for space. And we're, like I said, we don't have any paid employees. We're virtually, you know, we're a pretty poor organization. Audiences can be really unpredictable, and I can completely control the audience on Zoom. The other thing is candidates can be unpredictable, and I can control them on Zoom. But we have external forces like technology that can go awry, but those same things can happen in person. So like I said, I really do believe that for a lot of local leagues, you're going to see that they're going to be using Zoom. But this also means, in a great way, is that, let's say Catherine, who I know is going to Indiana University next year because she's amazing. Well, that doesn't mean I necessarily lose her as a moderator just because she goes away to college. Because it doesn't matter where she lives, she can still moderate for me, right? So there are a couple reasons why I really like Zoom. So what can go wrong and what do you do if? The candidates oftentimes will go over time. But the last time I did a candidate forum, I did 2 candidates that not one time used all of their time. Not once. Both of them, which meant I was able to ask 4 or 5 more questions than we had planned on asking, which sometimes can be a problem because you just don't have enough questions. So, and I guess you could end early, but if your audience is expecting an hour's time and your candidates are expecting an hour's time, they kind of want that time. And then we can have obstreperous candidates, just a big old fancy word for difficult to control. Disruptors, hecklers. I have been at a candidate forum where we had to ask the police to remove someone from our audience. Questions which are an attack. And that's why we use question sorters. Those questions go through our sorters before they go to our moderator. But I have been a moderator where they just hand me the questions. They don't sort them. They just hand them directly to me. And so then I, as moderator, decide, is this a question? Can both candidates answer this question? Is it an attack somehow? Is it partisan somehow? But I would never ask any of you to do that kind of forum without some experience. I've had experience, so I feel very confident doing it. Sometimes people want to argue. Sometimes they're repetitive. Afterwards, the audience will demand to see the questions. We say no. And this is what, you don't have to worry about this. Our voter services people and me, I act as a pretty good bodyguard. We are the shield. You don't have to worry about that. But you can call for a recess. Say, we're going to take a 5-minute break. We're going to let everybody calm down. Come back. If they're still unruly, I would just adjourn it. I would say, because we cannot get control over this meeting and be civil, and the League of Women Voters is about civil discourse, we are adjourning this meeting. And then there's also you could always call for security if it were in person. Like when we did Jan Schakowsky, she's a pretty high profile politician in the area, and we did her candidate forum. There were police on site, and we didn't do that, her people did that. And then, like I said, Zoom solves most of the problems. So these are all the things that I will, I'm going to put this in the chat. And, but right now, let's go to Q&A. And I'm going to stop share. There we go. Okay, Rosemary.
So as a young person, we might not know all of the topics that are on the questions.
Exactly.
So what do we do if that happens? Should we still ask the question?
Absolutely. And like I said, our Kat, I don't know if you can address this, if this has ever happened to you where you came across a question where you're like, I have no idea what this is talking about. But our question sorters are really good about formulating the question in such a way that it's easy for you to ask.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I've never really been in a situation where I didn't know what I was reading. And even if I wasn't like incredibly familiar with the topic, it still made like grammatical sense in English. So I was able to get the question out, and obviously the candidates knew more than I did, and they were able to provide answers. So I wouldn't worry too much about that.
Okay. Anything else? Oh, I'm just going to say, oh, thanks, Elliot. I was like about to say, pat myself in the back about what a good job I did.
Okay. So like you said about how adults quiet down when there's a child in the room. So if one of us were to be a moderator for like a forum or something that had adults as the candidates, I know from experience that a lot of adults do not view people that are much shorter than them as having the same intelligence as them.
So we've been using youth moderators at our league. I think we're one of the first in the country to use youth moderators. And we've been doing this for 3 years now. Kat, you've been a moderator for 2 years, right? And I know Violet was before you. So, and I get nothing but positive responses. In fact, because I have been using youth as moderators, I have one youth who was interviewed for a position in a law firm after she moderated our judicial forum. The Senator Ann Gillespie and Representative Mark Walker, because of seeing how smart and amazing our youth moderators are, they created this year an internship for high school students. So I think that what happens is, because you're involved in this, my goal is to change that perception, Elliot, because it is a misconception. I promise you, you kids are smarter than I am. You're busier than I am. I mean, that's my goal, is to get adults to see just how capable young people are. So that is why we use youth for these positions.
I'd also like to add on to that.
Yes,
I've
Kat.
never had any of the candidates be like, oh my gosh, you're a child, you didn't do well, or like you're short. It's not your height speaking for you. It's like the eloquence in which you present the questions. I've only ever received compliments, even when I've royally screwed up.
Oh,
So I would not worry about that. All the adults are super, super thrilled that kids are expressing an interest in politics. So they're just happy to have you there. And like Heidi said, they are more likely to be civil when there is a younger person involved. They're not afraid to yell when you're an adult, but because you have a teenager kind of in charge of the operation, so to speak, they are more hesitant to be uncivil.
Yeah. And I will say, even in league, there was a lot of doubt when I first posed the idea of having a young person as moderator. They're like, really? And I was like, trust me, just trust me. And then they were like, oh. So sometimes you just have to push them a little bit. Yes, Sophia.
So how do we find out about opportunities to moderate? Is that through you? Is that through the league?
It's through me. It's through our League of Women Voters. So a couple of things I do ask, and I put it in the chat, that you sign up to be a member. And we have what's called a sponsored member. So you just hit sponsored. And what that does is it helps us to cover the liability insurance. Not that you're going to be liable for anything, but it doesn't hurt. I mean, it just doesn't hurt. But usually what happens is the league is liable. And but if you're not a member, then you're not covered by my liability insurance. But that also gets you on my roster so that, and then I just, when I have opportunities, I send it to all the youth and say, hey, that I know are moderators. And I say, okay, these are the dates that I have, who's interested. For instance, I sent our moderator a couple, and I may have accidentally left Kat off, but like this coming Thursday, we have a panel discussion on mental health and COVID. And so one of our youth is moderating that. We also have this is new. We also have started having all of our programs ASL interpreted, American Sign Language interpreted. So you also have you've got a couple things going on. You've got your candidates, you've got your timer, and you've got your interpreter. That's something that we are trying to make our programs more accessible. We talk a big game about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so as president, I feel like we really have to, if we're going to talk the talk, we better walk it. Charlotte, did you have a question?
Yeah, if I don't want to moderate, but I want to volunteer, how old do you have to be?
Any age. My youngest member is 10. I have no age limit. Now to vote, so like for instance, we have a criminal justice consensus study coming up. So the league is nonpartisan, but we take positions on issues. So we have an issue, we have a position on equity. We have a position on equal pay. We have a position on the environment. We have a position, all these positions. But we only come to those positions after study and consensus, meaning our members have to vote that is how we as an organization are going to act. But so to vote, you have to be 16. But to be a member of our league, it does not matter any age. And I am the only league, I think, in the country who allows that. And again, it's because I believe that if I wait until you're 16 or 18 to get you involved in this process, I've waited way too long. As soon as you're old enough to think that you might be interested in politics, I believe you should have a place at the table. So there you go. So we have, and I will say, I think Kat can attest to this. I do think we try to give youth a lot of opportunity. They have their own newsletter.
Oh yeah.
And that they have full reign. All of our social media is run by youth. I've got one on LinkedIn, one on Twitter, one on our Instagram page, one on our student Instagram page, and one on our Facebook page.
Mm-hmm.
So lots of opportunities. What?
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I highly recommend that. I'll put it in the chat if you guys want to follow like the student Instagram page. We post some pretty fun content.
Yeah. Rosemary?
Just to make sure, there will always be like an adult on like standby just in case things go like terribly wrong, right?
Yeah, I would never, I mean, I think Kat will attest to this. I would never leave you out to dry, right, Greta? You know me. I don't leave you out to dry. Right? I'm gonna stand right beside you. It's not a joke. I say all the time, and it sounds really trite and like I'm kind of full of whatever, but I believe my job is to not reach down and try to pull you up, but to bend down and put you on my shoulders and to lift you up, because you guys really if I look at what is going on in our country, and if I look at what young people your age have done for the environment, for gun violence prevention, for equal pay, for diversity, equity, and inclusion, if I look at what you guys have done, you do way more than adults do. So my job, I believe, is to give you space to do that. Anything else? So yeah, so just sign up if you want to put if you want me to send anything to you via email, or email is probably better. I mean, I do text, but I can put my cell phone in the chat if you want to text me for any reason. I know sometimes that's the other thing, like we're trying to figure out how to communicate with our youth, because old people tend to be all email, but you guys tend to be all Snapchat and text. And so we're kind of in two different places. So we're trying to figure that out. We're trying to be better. So anything else? I really appreciate you all coming today. And I really, really look forward. And I know, Elliot, I just want to say, I know we're called the League of Women Voters. We are open to all genders and all gender identities. We're just a 100-year-old organization. We were formed because of in 1920, just as women were given the right to vote. And the goal was to get women to actually vote. The first election where women could vote, only 40% did. And those numbers haven't significantly changed. In this last presidential election, we saw a record voter turnout, and it still wasn't much above 50%. And our last local election, and this number scares me, in Arlington Heights, we had less than 10% of people show up to vote, meaning 1 in 10 people decided how your schools were going to be run, how your parks were going to be run, how your streets were going to be taken care of. And that's not right. There you go. All right. Well, I know it's not the most thrilling way to spend an hour of your time. And Elliot has a geometry test tomorrow. So go kill it, Elliot. And I know Greta's got to go practice for her DDA that she's competing this weekend. So anyway, keep, I'm going to also put my email in the chat. I want you guys to, whether you decide to sign up and be part, of our league, I want you to know that I have so many resources and so many ways that I can help you. I mean, I was a Girl Scout leader. I help girls get their gold award. My son has his Eagle Scout. I know people in politics. I just tend to know a lot of people. And my goal is to help you guys get a leg up and be as successful as you possibly can be. All right. Thanks so much. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and end it. So we can go watch, well, for me, it's usually RuPaul I'm going to watch. So
Awesome.
all right. We'll talk to you guys later. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Kat, so much for coming.
Oh yeah, of course. Have a nice evening. Enjoy RuPaul.
See ya.
Bye.